He was trying to get married, but instead he was murdered. 2 years ago, journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and never walked out. Now a new film aims to uncover the mystery surrounding his assassination. I'm Ali Aslan, and today's newsmaker is the documentary The Dissident. Jamal Khashoggi's killing sparked international outrage and demands for answers and justice. In the 2 years since, some have been found guilty for his murder. A Saudi court convicted 8 people last month, but others, including the kingdom's most powerful men, may have escaped justice. Both the UN and the CIA say there's evidence that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing, an allegation he denies. To this day, the exact details surrounding Khashoggi's death are still shrouded in mystery. But now a new documentary by Oscar-winning director Bryan Fogel sheds light on Saudi Arabia's role. In a moment, I'll ask him what he uncovered while making the film. But first, here's a look at the trailer for The Dissident.
My name is Hatice Cengiz. I am addressing you as a victim. A title forced on me after the brutal murder of my Jamal.
Jamal Khashoggi, prominent Saudi journalist and Washington Post columnist, has gone missing after visiting his country's consulate in Istanbul.
He was last seen entering Saudi Arabia's consulate seeking paperwork to marry his fiancée.
His fiancée saw him go in at 1 p.m. and was still waiting for him at 1 a.m.
Buhar olup uçmadı.
Saudi Arabia now suddenly is admitting that Khashoggi did die inside that building.
Jamal Khashoggi alelade bir şekilde öldürülmemiştir.
The government treated me as if I shot the king.
We knew that they would try to sweep the whole thing under the rug.
Is it true that Turkish intelligence obtained audio recordings of Khashoggi's murder?
I know why Jamal was killed. It's because of me.
Birileri tüm olup biteni rahatlıkla seyretmiş, hatta talimatlar vermiş olabilir.
We saved some particularly damning piece of the puzzle, like Saudi body double.
Jamal felt the whole country was against him, but this is not the truth. I said the best solution is create our own army.
The king firmly denies any knowledge of it. It could have been rogue killers, who knows?
I just received this. Be careful. Move from city to another one, and there's a team that's going to kill you soon. It's anonymous.
He has to be killed in a way that will send message to everyone else. Because if you kill Jamal with his status, who else you cannot kill? You can kill everyone.
I warned Jamal. Once you start working with us, you're not just a journalist, you're a dissident. What do you know about the beast?
Well, joining me now from the Zurich Film Festival is Academy Award-winning filmmaker Bryan Fogel. He's a writer, producer, and director of The Dissident. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us. As an Oscar-winning filmmaker, you could have had your pick of many issues, many topics, many subject matters. What drew you to this one?
Well, coming off of Icarus, I felt that I had an obligation, a moral responsibility as a filmmaker to continue to craft films that mattered, that had a cause, that had action behind them. The biggest example I can give you is when Icarus came out in 2017, we had essentially exposed the single biggest doping scandal in sport history, in Olympic history, that basically threw into credibility every medal that Russia had won over decades and decades of sporting fraud. Yet, despite all the reporting ahead of the movie's release, there was still no action taken against Russia. There still was no punishment. But when the film released in August of 2017, and tens of millions of people around the globe were able to see it, the Olympic Committee could no longer not take action. And 5 months later, they moved to ban Russia from the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics in Korea. And had there been Summer Games this 2020, it looked very likely that Russia would be banned again. And while it was the whistleblowing of Dr. Gregory Rodchenkov that ultimately is the reason for that ban, Icarus and the film and opening up that story to a huge population around the world, I believe was pivotal in the IOC, the Olympic Committee's ultimately response to take action. I tell that story because it's very similar for me on the journey with the Dissident. As I followed the story of Khashoggi's murder and ultimately Saudi Arabia's confession that Khashoggi had in fact been murdered inside the consulate, I found myself as a humanitarian, as an activist, as a human rights supporter, wanting to shed light on this story. And I found myself deeply enraged and impassioned to help tell this story because I viewed it as an affront on press freedom. I viewed it as an affront on freedom of speech and to liberties and democracies all over the world. And so I embarked on the journey of making this film.
And before we talk about what you have uncovered and discovered throughout the process of making this film, your documentary premiered at the Sundance Film Festival to much acclaim at the beginning of this year. But interestingly enough, you couldn't find distributors. No one wanted to touch this movie. No one didn't pick up your film. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that it is a reflection of what is arguably a very sad state of global affairs. We are seeing democracies threatened. We are seeing the rise of authoritarian regimes. And we're seeing that major media companies, which are now all publicly traded companies that account to their shareholders, and everything is the bottom line, dollars and cents, money and business. And so despite the film receiving incredible response, we found resistance from the major global streamers in taking on this subject matter. And I believe that largely has to do with business interests in the region and only concern about how to maintain subscriber growth rather than to protect stories that matter. But we persevered, have found an incredible distributor in the United States who will release the film in December. And we have distribution set up all over the planet right now with independent distributors, which will allow the film to have an independent voice in each country. And very excited to announce that we do have Turkish distribution, and the film will have a major release in Turkey, hopefully to coincide with the US release. And I do believe that the entire country will be able to see this film soon.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And it's a movie, we should add, that has been financed by the Human Rights Foundation. It's wonderful that now all the world will get to see it. Throughout this process, you've had access to unseen surveillance footage and unprecedented access really to damaging info. What really surprised you the most throughout the filming of this doc?
Well, there were many surprises, many revelations. And I should add that this film would have not been possible for me to make without the help and support of the Turkish authorities and government. As you know, especially with TRT, the transcript, which is in the film, parts of that transcript were released to Daily Sabah and other outlets, but Turkey provided me with the full transcript, which is in the film. None of the police surveillance footage has previously been released, and that is a part of the film as well. As I think you're aware, Fahrettin Altun has really not spoke on Turkey's strategy and how they brought this crime forward to the world, as well as Irfan Fidas, the chief prosecutor, Abrahimit Gül, and the CSI forensic police, Recep. None of those interviews or voices have been heard yet in regards to this story in a public manner. There is all sorts of other exclusive access in this film, from being with Hatice as she enters into Jamal and their home for the first time following the crime, to all of the evidence that Omar Abdulaziz, the Saudi dissident in Montreal, was able to record and prove, and actions taken against him. Of course, interviews with Wada Kanfar, Yasin Aktay, Turan Kislaki, and many, many close friends of Jamal. So, the film, I believe, is unique and exclusive, and is really the untold story behind the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And in crafting it, I worked very hard to craft it as a thriller and to make it feel like a narrative, big film, so that it would enrapture audiences, and hopefully through that enrapture elicit an emotional response, and through that emotional response help further call for justice for Jamal.
Certainly a response you have received from a wide range of people, Hillary Clinton all the way up to Sean Penn. They've already issued their support and admiration for the documentary. As you know, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has denied complicity in the killing from day one. First, he even denied that Saudi Arabia was behind it. What is your conclusion now that you've gone through the process of seeing all the footage? Any doubt in your mind that this killing could not have taken place without the knowledge or approval of the Crown Prince?
Absolutely none. I mean, I think most conclusive to that is Agnes Callamard's investigation. Clearly, the transcript, which shows the planning of the Saudis in the days leading up to Jamal's murder, and clearly in the cover-up of the crime and what was a state operation. And obviously, all of the surveillance footage which Turkey obtained, much of which is a part of the film, I think shows without any question of doubt that this was a state operation. And while I think it might be easy to deny responsibility, Saudi Arabia is a kingdom. So that means that power is in the hands of one or two people. So that power is in the hands of King Salman and his son, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So I think it's unfathomable to think that an operation of this scale, where the murderers were traveling with diplomatic passports on private planes owned by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, could have been ordered or approved outside the very, very highest level of the government.
And despite the damning evidence that you present, there have been no repercussions whatsoever up until now for those involved. The film also looks at governments and companies that continue to work closely with Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, the film ends credits include a list of corporations tied to Saudi Arabia. Why did you do that?
That actually was part of the screening at Sundance, but that has been removed from the film. And the reason why we removed that from the film is I wanted to keep the focus on Jamal. And I think sometimes it's easy to go down rabbit holes of conspiracies or how everybody else is taking a part, which I think is very clearly laid out in the film. But the one country in the world which has done everything it can, in my opinion, to hold Saudi Arabia accountable for this murder is Turkey. And Turkey has been, consistent and unrelenting in trying to seek justice for Jamal, even issuing more indictments just days ago. So, I think in this specific case and in this specific murder, the world should be looking to Turkey and listening to them as Turkey has unrelentingly sought to have justice brought forward in this murder.
The one country that undoubtedly yields a great deal of influence in and with Saudi Arabia is the United States, of course. Donald Trump, however, is on record in his interview with Bob Woodward saying he prevented an inquiry despite the CIA pointing fingers towards Mohammed bin Salman. Talk a little bit about the role of the U.S. president here.
Well, I think, in the film, anybody criticizing the president is actually a Republican. And I did that intentionally because I was not seeking to create a bipartisan film. I was not seeking to create a film attacking Donald Trump or his policies. And so in the film, Lindsey Graham admonishes the president, as does Bob Corker, as does Rand Paul. These are all firm conservative Republicans saying that the administration in the United States needs to hold Saudi accountable. And in working with Atija, Jamal's fiancée, in making this film, and traveling with her to Washington, and not only shooting with her, but taking closed-door meetings with everyone from Nancy Pelosi to Senator Mark Warner to high-level Republicans, Democrats from both Congress and Senate. There seems to be a real desire to take some sort of meaningful action in this crime. And yet the Trump administration has went against Congress in taking any actions. So this doesn't appear to be the desire of the American people or the desire of the Congress, including the Senate, which is held by the Republicans. This appears to be coming from the administration itself.
Brian, at the beginning of this interview, you said that you tried to bring justice to Jamal Khashoggi and highlight awareness to his case. We know that only 8 people so far have been sentenced. It's fair to say that you think that justice has not been served up until now.
Well, Saudi Arabia would like you to believe that justice has been served, and any attempts to hold his killers accountable, to extradite members of the Tiger team, the kill team, or even charge people such as Saad al-Qahtani or al-Asiri or the head of the Saudi consulate in Istanbul have not happened. The trial was held in secrecy. It was not disclosed. The names of those on trial were not disclosed. And I think, you know, for Saudi Arabia to punish those accountable and not allow Turkey to prosecute that crime, as the crime happened in Turkey, on Turkish soil, you know, is definitely not justice. And it appears that the punishments for these crimes, which were initially the death sentence, which have now been turned into prison sentences ranging, I think, from 7 to, you can correct me, how many years? 15 years?
Something about that, yeah.
You know, doesn't feel like proper justice in this case, because those that ordered the crime are not being held accountable and are having no price to pay.
Brian, you're often being referred to as a courageous filmmaker who takes on authoritarian governments, Icarus being a very vivid example, exposing the Russian doping program. Now you're taking on Saudi Arabia. Are you concerned about your own safety?
No. And, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm a journalist and I'm a filmmaker. And, you know, I don't believe for 1 minute that you know, freedom of expression and freedom of voice, you know, is at risk. And so I don't focus on that when making my films. And also, I'm not exposing this murder. Turkey exposed this murder, and the valiant efforts of the Turkish government and Turkish intelligence brought this story to light. Otherwise, we would not know what happened to Jamal. So rather, I am just a voice in this story that is using my art and my technique through cinema to help bring this story to the world.
Brian, how hopeful are you that your film will bring justice to this case and to Jamal Khashoggi?
You know, I think we use the word justice very broadly, very widely, and you must ask, what is the definition of that justice? I don't think it's realistic that Mohammed bin Salman will not be king. I think he will be the king. There's nobody to challenge him. I don't think it's realistic that, you know, that suddenly democracy comes to Saudi Arabia. And I don't believe that it is realistic that Saad al-Qahtani and al-Asiri and MBS and members of the Tiger team are extradited and held in a criminal court in The Hague or brought to trial in Turkey. So I think justice in that capacity is unrealistic. But I think there are other forms of justice, and that's businesses around the world standing up and saying, hey, these actions are unacceptable. We choose not to do business with this country until it changes its human rights record. Saudi Arabia is up for a vote on the Human Rights Council, and that, of course, should not be granted. And then there's the G20 coming up in November, and the idea that, you know, the 20 richest countries in the world are going to come to Riyadh is essentially giving permission for these sort of behaviors. And so I believe that there are leaders all over the world and governments all over the world, both at the smaller level all the way up to the top, that can take action to let the world know that these sort of crimes will not be tolerated.
The documentary is The Dissident, the untold story about the murder that shook the world. Brian Fogel, thank you so much for joining us, and all the best and good luck. And thank you out there for watching, of course. Hope to see you again next time for a new edition of Newsmakers.